were afraid to let rates go up because of all the debt that we had. They knew that if they let rates go up, it was going to be a problem. So they kicked the can down the road and they kept them low. But the point is that all of the money in housing, it doesn't make housing more affordable. It actually makes housing more expensive, right?
Of course.
Whenever the government comes in to try to help you pay for something, they actually make it more expensive. If you look at all the areas where the government is involved in a big way, which would be housing, healthcare, education, that's where prices have gone up the most, right? It's because the government gets involved and subsidizes it. You know, before the government got involved in education, college was not expensive, right? If you were upper middle class in the 1940s, 1950s, you could afford to send your kids to Ivy League schools. It was, wasn't that big a deal, right? If you were poor, like my father grew up poor, right? He wasn't dirt poor, but he was, he thought he was like upper, lower middle. But my father's father, they had 8 kids. And his mother didn't have a job, right? So even though my grandfather worked as a carpenter, he had a wife who didn't have a job, and he was able to support 8 kids. And they had a house, they had like a beach house, they had a car. I mean, they lived okay for, what he would consider, upper, lower class.
Well, if they had a house and a beach house, by modern standards, they'd be rich.
But they weren't back then.
Right. I was saying, even having 8 kids, either you're Amish or you're rich.
Yeah, nobody could afford 8. I mean, you got to be rich to afford 8 kids today. And of course, you could because your wife would have a job. My grandmother didn't work. And my grandfather came to this country without a penny. He didn't even speak English. He came here at about 12 or 13. No welfare, no food stamps, no government housing, just nothing. Just show up and, get a job.
Where did they live?
In New Haven, in Connecticut. He worked on building the Yale Bowl. It's like his first thing he did. But anyway, so my father didn't have any money for college. So he got a job in the summer, and that paid for all his college. He didn't graduate with any debt. He worked his way through college like a lot of his friends. That was common to do back then. There was no government loans. Nobody could get a loan to go to college. But because nobody can get a loan to go to college, the universities had to keep the cost down or they wouldn't have any customers. So there was a lot of free market pressure to keep tuition down. But what happened during the 1960s is the 18-year-olds got the vote, right? And once 18-year-olds could vote, politicians figured, well, how can we get these kids to vote for us? Oh, let's promise that they don't have to work their way through college anymore. You could just bum around Europe all summer.
Go to Woodstock.
And we'll arrange loans for you. You can loan money, you can borrow money, and just pay it back later when you get your job. And so they started all these government guaranteed loans. And then what happened? The colleges reacted to that by raising prices. Hey, the kids have all this money, right? Let's raise prices. And then they kept increasing how much the kids could borrow, and the colleges kept raising prices. And then they said, oh, well, let's have fancy gymnasiums. Let's have nicer dorms. Nobody cared how much anything cost because all the loans were coming in. And so the government got involved, and now college costs a fortune. Everybody has a degree, so it doesn't even mean anything anymore. And you graduate with a mortgage, right? The government caused tuition prices to skyrocket. The same thing with healthcare.
May I ask a question about college loans? How did the lenders do in that arrangement?
Well, the lenders did great because the government guaranteed all the loans. So the lenders didn't care if the kids could pay back the loans. It didn't matter what your major was, right? You could major in basket weaving. You could go to a college, where you take, you don't even know reading or math. I mean, they didn't care because the government guaranteed every loan. And so, in a free market, you couldn't borrow all this money because the banks would be worried about getting the money back. Why am I going to loan all this money to somebody who has no assets? But once the government comes in, then nobody cares, right? That's what happened.
So the lenders got pretty rich on this then.
Of course. The lenders made a fortune and the universities made a fortune because they got to charge more for their product.
Exactly.
Right? Reason it exists.
Yeah.
Without the government, there would be no student loan debt. Colleges would be a lot less expensive. And people, would work their way through like my dad did if they didn't come from an affluent family. But they did the same thing with healthcare. I mean, health insurance and healthcare is expensive because the government is so involved in it. And even if you look at where the government is not involved, like LASIK surgery, prices have come down. for those procedures because the government doesn't pay for it. The government and the reason that we all have insurance, right? People have, insurance for everything now. And in fact, what really made it bad, and Trump doesn't, the Republicans want no role in repealing it, is under Obamacare. They said that insurance companies cannot discriminate against people who are already sick, right? If you have a pre-existing condition, the insurance companies have to charge you the same as if you were completely healthy, which destroys the whole concept of insurance and makes it extremely expensive.
Well, it's not insurance at that point.
It's not. It's free healthcare. It's like you can't buy fire insurance after your house burns down.
Right.
And if you could, nobody would buy fire insurance before it burns down.
Well, no one would have a fire extinguisher either.
Well, yeah.
Why?
Yeah, well, it's like, what if you could buy car insurance that covered all your gas, right?
Right.
I mean, would you I mean, nobody expects their auto insurance to cover their gas or their oil changes or their tires, right? You buy auto insurance in case you get a wreck and now you have your car is totaled, right? You know, the money. Health insurance is supposed to be, I got cancer, I got a brain tumor. You're not supposed to have health insurance because you sprained your ankle, because you had a baby,
or your annual
because you got the flu. Yeah, all of that stuff is supposed to be paid for out of pocket. But the reason it's not is because the government created a perverse incentive for people to get their insurance from their employer. Because if your employer gives you health insurance, there's no tax. If they give you money to buy health insurance, then you have to pay taxes. So now everybody gets their health insurance from their employer. And now they have health insurance that pays for everything. And so, you go to a doctor sometimes, and if they tell you you need to do something, ask what it costs. They're like, who the hell knows? Nobody knows what anything costs.
Yeah.
Because nobody cares, because nobody's paying for it, right? The person that's paying for it isn't even in the room, right? You have the patient and the doctor, and neither one of them is knows what anything costs, because you got some third party that's paying the bill. So the entire system doesn't work, but it's all because government got involved, right? When government tries to make things more affordable, it makes them more expensive. The only way to make things cheaper is to let the free market do it, right? The free market is great at lowering costs and increasing quality.